Welcome to Motherhood, Aligned and Assigned, where we help guide mothers from symptoms to solutions.
We're Dr. Serena Kaufman and Dr. Veronica Schultz, nervous system specialists helping families discover the missing link in their wellness journey.
Join us as we translate complex health challenges into simple, actionable solutions for you and your children.
Because your family deserves to thrive,
not just survive. Hello and welcome back to Motherhood, Aligned and Assigned. I have a question for you, and I want to know if you've ever wondered why your child melts down over the tags in their shirt, refuses to wear socks because they feel weird, quote unquote, or gets so overwhelmed by a birthday party or a crowded grocery store that you have to leave early every single time. And while you're doing your best to hold it all together, people around you, maybe even professionals, are saying it's behavior problems, it's parenting issues. Don't worry, they'll grow out of it. In the age old, you can always put them on medication, right? Let me be the one to say what most won't. One, it's not your fault. It's not that it's a parenting problem. It's not that it's always a boundaries problem. It's not their fault. It's not that they're bad kids. And it's deeper than just behavior. Today, we're diving into the nervous system first approach and uncovering what's really going on beneath the surface for kids just like yours. I feel like I have a pretty solid, I just saw like 15 toddlers for behavior recently. So it might have been like 8 or 9, but still we have a solid clientele of toddlers who have behavior. And I got to see a bunch of them today. So yeah, what we see in our practice every single week is kids who can't tolerate loud sounds, bright lights, or certain textures, are picky eaters, right? Are defiant little ones who don't want to necessarily eat all the food on their plate, right? Kids who crumble right after school or even in school. We have a lot of kids who maybe are but families who are worried their kids are going to get kicked out of like preschool and grade school, needing to find a new school. Kids who seem anxious, aggressive, unable to focus. And then parents who feel like they've tried everything and still feel like they're failing. And I want to just remind you that these are not bad kids. You are not a bad parent. And what's really going on is something that we call the perfect storm.
Yeah, and this storm starts way earlier than a lot of people realize. And often it's starting in pregnancy. And so when you come into our office, the PX Doc's office, we're going to ask you how your pregnancy was with this child that you feel like is struggling a lot. And then we're going to ask you how birth went. And we've talked about both of these things, right? Because even if your pregnancy seemed healthy, our definition of that is a little narrower than like no complications, right? It's like, how stressed were you? How is your sleep and your digestion and stress levels? Stress is a huge one in your pregnancy because your baby's feeling all of that. And that, we've talked about this before. There is a blessing in that, right? We're preparing them for the world they're coming into. And there's also, with blessings comes the weight of like some, what's a good word for it?
Repercussions.
I don't know. Yeah. There's just
responsibilities.
Yeah. So sure. There's just the opposite end of that is if you are really stressed in pregnancy, that's the number one thing I see. That they're like, oh, my pregnancy was fine. And then like when I asked about stress, like, oh, we moved twice unexpectedly. And I had this family crisis and I was really struggling with managing my other 2 kids on my own because my husband was trying to take this job somewhere else. Like it stress, right? And that makes it really hard for our nervous system to then tap into birth mode. And birth mode, we have to tap into, is this environment safe to have a baby? And if it's not, our bodies are going to have a really hard time having a baby, right? And that leads to birth interventions, right? Which is, that starts with epidurals, and sometimes it's necessary, right? Sometimes we need the epidural to get through the intensity of labor, but it's a factor, right? Because epidurals lead to this, or inductions first, right? Induction usually leads to way more intense birth, which makes an epidural a very friendly option. And then we have this intervention cascade that goes down that often leads to more like manual interventions of getting baby out, right? And that's a lot of chemical, emotional, because those interventions can be unexpected, and then physical stress on baby. So they're experiencing a lot of sensory input into their system at once that can push their gas pedal on. And then that gas pedal looks like, did your baby with behavior issues, did they have colic? Did they have digestive issues? Food sensitivities right off the bat? Were they really bad sleepers? Those are things we're going to ask about. And then did they struggle with milestones? Are they picky eaters? And and then we're getting to this hierarchy of development of, okay, top of the pyramid is social, emotional interactions and connections with people, which is the behavior we're seeing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I like to always tell parents, like, kind of going back to our neuro soft science, right? Yes, we want to focus on behavior. However, behavior is a complex mix of things neurologically, right? It's what is happening around me. Can I understand that? What am I being asked to do? Can I understand that? And then can I actually do it? So even if we just break down that alone, right? Being able to walk into a room, interpret your environment, understand what is happening in your environment, understanding what is happening inside your environment, and then understanding how to execute on that. That's a very complex process. And so if we can't even poop properly, or if we're not sleeping great, right? If we're not eating great, our appetite is shot, right? Your nervous system is going to have a very, very hard time being able to do those, 3 or 4 steps well, right? When we don't even have a good firm foundation to build off of, which is that like eating, sleeping, and pooping, right? So I always like to tell parents, trust the process, because when you come into the office, it's like, I am going to be asking a lot of things, and it's not to say I'm not hearing you, and we're all working toward that goal of getting listening ears on, right? And getting less tantrums, less meltdowns, less biting, less kicking, all that stuff, right? But we have to start with that foundation first, and that's typically what happens first is the kid starts sleeping better, which again, that alone can be, why they were irritated in the first place because they weren't sleeping, right? Are they eating better, right? Are they less cranky because they're not as hungry? So we see behavior kind of start to chip away, but then as we kind of go through the care plan, we see it kind of ebb and flow, because there's also the experience of when you're stuck in fight or flight, you're not experiencing the fullness of your emotions, right? So there's also that emotional regulation, experiencing not just anger or not just sadness, but then there's like overwhelm, there's happiness, there's joy, there's all kinds of things. I have a lot of parents who are like, oh my gosh, they like all of a sudden my kid who was just like this angry kid all the time is crying all the time. They won't stop crying. And it's like, that's great. Their nervous system is going back and rebuilding the building blocks of sadness, right? Experiencing what does sadness feel like and the depth of that. And maybe they'll get goofy and silly. Like there's just so many different milestones that happen. Even if your kid is 8, right? They still might go back through and experience these emotions fully for the first time. And that's not all that, sometimes I was going to say it's not a bad thing. It's never a bad thing. Sometimes it's a hard thing, but it's actually all a sign that the nervous system is rewiring those connections that they wanted to rewire back then, but they couldn't because they were in a state of high stress, high survival mode, and, heavy fight, flight, fawn responses.
And let's talk about the numbers real quick of how many kids these days are experiencing exactly what you're talking about. So we have 1 in 6 children today struggling or diagnosed with neurological or developmental delays or disabilities. And 40% of kids have at least one chronic condition, one chronic health condition. And that's crazy. And this is what you're getting at when you're talking to parents. Are like, okay, bear with me here, because most of us, the thought process is let's chase the symptoms, right? The symptom is ADHD. And so we're chasing that with medication to help them focus, right? And when really upstream, the problem is a really noisy brain from nervous system dysregulation or emotional dysregulation because we're not processing our environment well. And so we're melting down because our bucket is just overflowing and we don't know how else to respond to our environment, right? And so parents really, and rightfully so, parents really, really care about the emotional dysregulation and the ADHD and those big higher level things. And we are over here talking about how they're eating, sleeping, pooping, and then how their nervous system is regulating, because that has to come first. And if we just stick to chasing symptoms, we're no better than a prescribing doctor, right? So we're educated to approach it differently, and so that's what we have to do. And another incredible way that we get to track progress is with our neurological insight scans, because our child can't communicate how they're feeling and how their nervous system is regulating, right? Almost none of us can if we're dysregulated, even if we're adults. And so our scans, what we're going to see before we see emotions regulate is we're going to see scans regulate and become much less noisy, much more balanced. We're going to see, oh, the digestive center is looking like it's online. There's much less noise in the middle of the back, top of the neck, where that's like really loud to the brain and causes a lot of chaos and noise in the brain. We're going to see those things on scans as we move through care so that you as a parent know that there's hope and that big changes are happening and can make sense of those changes when they're not exactly what we expected, right? When they're backtracking.
Right.
And then we know, okay, what are the primary things that we should be looking at when we're adjusting and what technique should we be using, all those things. So that is huge. And in communicating how your child is healing, even because it's not linear and it's not always our priority. The order in which our nervous system heals is up to our nervous system, and it's not always in line with our priorities. And our scans can help us see that.
Amen.
Yeah.
That was beautifully said.
Okay.
So when it comes to like what this looks like in real time, just to kind of give, a parent like what does this mean for my kid? How can I truly see results and what does that process look like? Because I will say, I actually was on Facebook last night and I saw someone be like, there's this chiropractor who does these weird scans and she recommended a care plan and she keeps adjusting the same thing on her. I'm not sure if it's working. I think it's a scam. So I just wanted to, I was like, well, first of all, your doctor should probably be communicating a little bit better because it's not a scam. It's what I do. But all that to say, it does feel like a lot when a parent comes in. It's like, my child has behavior. Can you just help me out? Why do I have to do this whole care plan and come 3 times a week? And, are you trying to just steal my money? And I will say, I want to kind of take it back before I talk about Parker's story, take it back to the science behind this, right? And how we're actually rewiring the brain for life, right? We're literally taking how your brain was compensating and how it was working one way. We are shifting that amygdala, cortex, that hypothalamus communication, right? We are telling the brain, hey, you knew this way, and now we're going to change to this way. And here's how the adjustment is going to help you downregulate your amygdala, upregulate your cortex so that you can get these changes. And so you come in, we hear your story, you get scanned. And then for Parker, it started off as he just would take the best naps. Like the mom was like, I just want him to take good naps. We walked him through the care plan. And as we kind of did that, we actually saw some other things. We saw things like toe walking. We saw things like head banging. We saw things like like one side of his body was doing one thing, the other side of his body was doing anything. So like, what word am I trying to come up with here? The asymmetry. Yes, thank you.
I have several
asymmetry. Yeah, right. We were seeing some asymmetry in his function, right, overall. And so when we got down to it, we found out it was much more than just sleeping. And then there was also behavioral associated with it. It was much more than just behavior and sleeping. It was all of these other things that the nervous system was trying to communicate but couldn't, right? The head banging, the kicking, the outbursts, the lack of sleeping, not being able to settle down for naps, right? And so as we kind of walked through, we got him scanned. We started off at, I think he was in intensive. We just did like a 6-day-a-week protocol, right? And then we just went down to 3 times a week. He's now toward the end of this care plan, and now he's doing so much better. He's able to listen. He's able to communicate. He learned so many new words in this process, right? His brain went back through, cleaned up what wasn't there before, and now he's able to communicate with his parents, which also helped tantrums, right? Because his parents can now understand him. He now is able to say, hey, I want this. I want to do this, right? And that alone can help with behavior, because how frustrating would it be to want to communicate something but can't, right? It's like, I know what I want, but I can't get the words out. So his vocab has increased, right? His scans are looking a lot more in alignment, right? And when he runs, he's no longer tripping. He's no longer toe walking because he's no longer tense. He's no longer, experiencing his left side of the brain doing one thing and his right side of the brain doing the other thing. And so as we get down to this care plan and we're getting into that wellness, he's a toddler, right? So it's not like we're going to get perfect. It's like, he's never had a tantrum again. That would be unrealistic. I have tantrums still, right? So like, that's not my goal here. My goal is that when he does have tantrums, he's able to get out of it because he can reason better, right? His mom can get through to him better. His mom can communicate with him. She can distract him from the environment and get him, a new goal created with him. And so that's kind of what we're seeing, is that he's much more coordinated. His scans are looking great. We're finalizing that last neurological pathway before we send him into wellness. His mom has been seeing those changes neurologically before sometimes anything outside happened, right? But she is just feeling overall so much better, and he's much more smiley. He's much more, it's just really cool when we get to hear things like, my kid's back. I get to truly experience who my kid is without the tantrums, without the meltdowns, without all of those things. And that's just kind of what it looks like in our office, and in Dr. Serena's office, that's what you get to experience. Is you experience, in this case, what could have been, when you think about toe walking and headbanging, what those kinds of things down the road could have created. We're now seeing that we're no longer walking down that road, and we're seeing him experience life in the fullest. And his parents are really thrilled about that as well. So,
it's crazy.
Yeah, that's what you can expect.
So mom came in with the goal of, I just want my kid to sleep. And you're like, hold up. What if they also could express themselves to their full potential? And so here's this care plan that's a little beyond sleeping, right? Because sleeping probably started happening a third of the way through that care plan.
Yeah.
And you're like, but wait a minute, there's more. Yeah, I do that with pain all the time. Because it seems like you get a lot of kiddos, and I'm still getting 30s, people's in their 30s and 40s, anxiety, those kinds of things. And they're like, also I have shoulder pain. Also I have sacrum pelvis pain. I'm like, okay, I care about that. But I'm going to take it one step further in how's your sleep, your focus, your emotional regulation, your fuse, all of those things, right? So it's like, hey, we're going to meet your goals here. And then these are the big goals I have for you that you're allowed to have, right? And most parents don't know that they're allowed to have these big goals. So,
one of my favorite questions to ask.
Miracles, right?
I love it. I was like, you're in the perfect trick today. One of the questions I love to ask in the, the history portion of it is, if you had no limitations on what you wanted your child's health to look like or your health to look like, what would those be?
Yeah.
And we finally get people, things like get off medication or, these big goals that they won't even tell me until I open the door for okay, yes, we can do this, but what would it look like for more? And it's at that point they're like, oh, I haven't even allowed myself to consider that. That right there is healing, right? But then when that you've got science-based technology and strategy and implementation to meet those goals, you start to see them happen, and it's really cool what we get to do in this office.
Yeah. I love this job.
Right? I love it.
Yeah, seriously, the stuff that can make me cry in this office is when moms tell me, it's not like the sleep and the digestion and all those things. When moms tells me, my kid is singing for the first time again in forever. My kid is drawing again for the first time in forever. They're funny now. They are that. I have to go back and take a minute because hold on.
Yeah.
They're expressing themselves the way God created them to be expressing themselves, right? That's they're doing what makes them human and beautiful and wonderful. And they couldn't do that before because they were so stuck in that fight or flight. And that is the beauty of removing stress from the nervous system so the body can adapt and heal the way it was designed to and shine the way it was designed to.
Mic drop. Amen. All right. Speaking of, I got to get back to doing that same exact thing. Cool. So would you like to pray us out?
Yes. Dear Lord, thank you for creating us so beautifully and wonderfully and fearfully. Thank you for our ability to relate to one another socially and emotionally. And please, Lord, help us for those kiddos who are struggling with that and those adults who are struggling with that. Guide them to where they can find nervous system healing so they can shine the way you designed them to, Lord. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us on Motherhood, Aligned and Assigned.
We hope today's episode helped you connect the dots in your family's health journey.
Remember, this is where nervous system health meets motherhood wisdom.
Until next time, we're Dr. Veronica Schiltz
and Dr. Serena Kaufman, supporting you as you nurture your family's well-being.
Because when you're aligned, everyone thrives.